And we are live with Douglas Haddad. How are you, Douglas? How are you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me and all of our new family
Peter.
back together. Yeah,
I still keep it on my desk.
you still got it. Oh, that's great. Yeah, mine's somewhere upstairs. Oh,
Nice to meet you, and nice to I attended like the last part of your session, and I wanted to know more about it and know beyond what you did last time. And I was very lucky to get your book. Remember,
yes.
I was the first one on the online, and I got your signature and little thing of okay.
Oh,
Thank you
there it
so
is.
much.
You actually beat the mob. Remember the
Yes.
mob? It was crazy. Oh,
There you go. I was the first one.
yeah.
So thank you so much. I was
Oh,
honored. It's on my reading list now. So I'll finish
great.
some stuff and just start in it. We're
Awesome.
always concerned about our teens and tweens. And I know you're doing so much work about that area in life. And your topic was about the 6 S's to raise a child. And now you're going to talk today about something a bit different. But can you give us the 6 S's, and then we're going to go to the what the teens and tween wish they could tell us or we know about. So
Sure, yeah. At my talk in Abu Dhabi, as you know, I kind of had a play on numbers and words. I said, in order for a child to be successful, they need to be full of 6 S's.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those 6 S's include self-confidence, self-discipline, self-motivated, self-regulated, self-reliant, and smart. And I realized in all my years teaching and working with children in the teen and tween realm, if you have those 6 S's, that's the recipe for success. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was your talk about the 6 S's.
Yes. So that overviewed, we talked for an hour at the Haddad on that. And then in part of my talk, what was really interesting, and I saw a lot of people in the audience writing a lot of this down, was when I said to them, I said, I've done some research on this from my students. And they really talked about like, what are today's teens and tweens really wishing for? What are they thinking? What do they want to talk to their parents about? But it's not always quite comfortable to do so. So that's where I got into that discussion on that, because I think that's really the eye opener and the lens that I'm privileged to actually have in my sort of wheelhouse, because I deal with these kids every day and I hear what they're talking about. And when they don't think I'm listening, I'm listening. So
What is the subject you're teaching at school?
So I teach science at school.
S also, huh? S starts with S.
Starts with S. Yes, it does. Yep. And I also teach a connections class. So we do different activities in there that, really help kids come together and connect. So I could share some of the things from the research.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. So I would say one big thing is that kids in this age range, like if you're listening right now and you have a child that's, about to be a teenager, you're going to see some change set in, and don't panic, because a lot of times I hear, what happened, my sweet little boy or girl or child? And nothing happened. It's just called adolescence. So what they do is they're striving for independence. They want to, have their own identity. And it just constantly goes back and forth between being a kid and wanting to be an adult. And it's that's where the pull and the stress that parents feel and the conflict resides right in there. So if you could just feel comfortable in that uncomfortable zone for a while and go with the flow, yet providing parameters and structure, that's going to be paramount, because as much as kids want that independence, they want to know that there's a routine.
Limits.
Yeah, they want to know there's a structure. They want to know, like you said, there's limits involved. And yes, they want space, but one big thing from all the research I've gathered is they don't want too much space. They want that safety harness there. And I think that's extremely important as parents to realize. I see it too when we talk about even doing homework. A lot of times I'll hear parents say, well, they're in middle school. That's where I really teach, spend most of my time. And I said, yes, they are. They said, well, they should be smart enough to know like that they need to do homework, and I'm just going to let them go. Well, there's a difference between just kind of letting them fall and having that safety harness, and then, catching them and then telling them what's what and then letting them fly again. So that's where I would say, for parents, here's a great example for those countries that some countries don't actually give homework. I know Finland doesn't. So if you're listening from Finland right now, this doesn't apply.
We got double homework.
Is it double homework in Egypt? Yeah. Oh, yeah. And a lot of countries I know do. When I spoke to people from India and China, So I would say check first off that they're actually writing down their homework, whether it's they're doing it digitally online, it's on a Google Classroom, or if it's a good old fashioned agenda. And then just help them structure. What I often suggest is do the hard stuff first because you have the most energy, and then scaffold it down to the easiest. And then just check for completion. At this particular time and age, I'm not expecting, and parents, you shouldn't have to dedicate your time to making sure everything is perfectly, accurately correct, because that's the job of the teacher, and also the responsibility and onus put on the child to help them best learn. That's where they can fall and make mistakes, and then go to the teacher if they need extra help. So that was number one on the list. There's a bunch I could share.
Yeah, share
Right.
what every teen wants us to know and how they're
Yeah.
going. Yeah.
All right, so I'll sort of bullet some others because there was a bunch, but I took sort of the highest prevalence of them. Another thing is I wish my parents would be patient, listen, and actually give advice. So that's where it gets into the aspect of, I don't know if you recall at my talk, I talked about the 3 universal truths that all children desire. And one of them was every child desires to feel heard and understood. So one of the things I mentioned, and I'm guilty of it at times as well, is sometimes we listen with the ear to reprimand and to tell our child what to do. We're not really listening to them. We're just kind of like, yeah. They talk, and then we tell them what we prescribe versus listen to understand. So that's the reciprocal, that's the active listening, that's the reflective listening. That's where you hear a lot of experts talk about reflective responses and validating their feelings and empathizing. And I have a technique in my book, and you'll see that where it's called the REV technique. So REV, R-E-V.
R-E-V. Okay.
Yeah. So it is the reflective response. So when a child does speak with you, for example, if they say, oh, I didn't do well on my test today. If you ask them about how'd you do, and like, oh, I didn't do well. And then you respond to that by actually repeating what they said. And so I hear you didn't do too well. And then they're like, yeah. Then you empathize. You could say, well, I could certainly understand when I was in school, not everything was easy. I struggled on certain things. And then you validate their feelings. Say, I can imagine how you feel right now is you don't feel really good. So what do you think you can do next time? So you put it in their court, you ask questions, let them be the ones who are doing most of the talking, and then they'll be able, that starts the conversation. So that's the listening to understand versus listening to reprimand, in short. Another thing is just in terms of the emotional safety at home, a big thing was I wish my parents would not raise their voices and yell so much. I think parents sometimes may forget that they're the greatest role models of the child. Monkey see, monkey do. It's up to you.
Yeah.
And I really believe that you're on stage as a parent. Kids are very perceptive to what's going on. So your actions just through your calmness, and your greatest 2 superpowers really out there, parents, and I've discovered this, is being patient and being kind. Those are really the 2 big ones, and that's what children long for.
I've noticed when you were talking about that the children want their parents to listen to them, and the same thing that the parents are saying, we want our children to listen to us. So
Yes.
the same thing, and actually asking not to raise their voice. The teens are asking us not to raise our voice, and this is the same thing the parents are telling. So it's the same thing, the conflict going back and forth. Same thing.
Exactly. It really is. One of the great cures, I believe, to this, and I would highly suggest for every family out there, is come up with a family contract and have it large, have it visible in a spot that's often trafficked in your home. And one of the things you can do with that is, before you even write up a contract, have everybody sit down together and write out, what does an ideal family look like? And one of those things I'm sure a child's going to say is that we all listen to each other. Nobody yells, nobody screams. So that's a great way to get reciprocal action, not just the parent not screaming, but also the child not screaming. And you can often refer to that and say, hey, look, we agreed upon this. And then if it comes to be where somebody breaks that, there should be a bit of a consequence system in there. Maybe the child has to do some extra contributions, or maybe they have to find a way to pay back the family. And same with the adult. If the adult's raising their voice or by some chance, saying a word that they're not supposed to, and they're like, oops, I didn't mean that. They put some money into the jar or do something extra. That's really key. That's the family contract.
Yeah. And you said you mentioned 3 universal truths. You mentioned one of them. What's the other 2?
So the other 2 are every child desires to feel loved. And they want to know that they can always go to you and be you, be themselves, that is, and just really feel accepted for who they are and unconditionally loved. Not the framework of kind of, who you should be because your parents would be best proud. I mean, there's an element of that's raised in morals and values, but also you're you're your unique self. So I think it's important, again, for, parents to be there, because if the child's not getting that unconditional love with the parents, they're going to look for it in all the wrong places. And all the wrong places could lead toward relationship issues down the road. It could lead toward getting involved in the wrong crowd and addictions and a lot of problems. And I've seen it happen with peer groups of me growing up, and also kids that I've taught over the years. So that's number 2. Number 3, is that all children desire to be accepted and respected. And I've seen this because a lot of kids come into my classroom, and I teach at the middle school level. So they all come in from so many elementary schools, and they don't all know each other. So they're all in the beginning, they're really not judgmental toward one another. And then once they start to form groups, which is natural, they want to form and be accepted into like-minded groups, could be sports group, gaming group, reading group. What happens is, if we're not careful as teachers, I could speak for myself and our teachers, that if we don't mix it up and find ways to always team build, they can form these real hard, fast groups. And then that's what ends up in, and exactly what I'm talking about, is you get into these groups. They could be online chat groups, like a WhatsApp group, and then you're excluded from the group. And then if that's the case, children will do anything to be accepted. Their behaviors will become aberrant sometimes. They could be self-inflicting harm to get attention, or outward violence toward others. Seen this time and time again. So those are 3 universal truths: to be loved, to be heard and understood, and to be accepted and respected.
Lovely. Great. Let's go back to the things that the teens want to tell us. So you mentioned space. They want space, at the same time, space with safety boundaries. So not the space that we think they do whatever you want. At the same time, they value freedom. So they are asking for freedom all the time. So balancing that is important for space and safety.
Exactly. And, knowing their peer groups is going to be important and really invaluable for that, because that's where a lot of the safety comes in, where, as parents, you might say, well, I don't know really where you're going, where you're playing, what you're doing. So making that connection with the parents of those peers, even so at school, if they're staying after for a certain activity, or there's like a dance, and you're like, what's going on? So I would recommend for parents to actually get involved in parent-teacher council. And I mentioned this in the discussion panel over in the United Arab Emirates. I said, because parents are like, well, how can I really make a change? How can I know what's going on? And that's one big thing, because once you get involved with the school, you can then get into the administrative head and give them ideas that can spiral into curriculum and make systemic change. So that's a big thing I would say for parents out there. If you have the time, somehow get involved with the school and the peer groups.
How about privacy? I mean, they are all asking for privacy, and the parents are not. They want to see what they are doing, and
yeah, that's another thing that's on the list. They do want privacy, and they mentioned that. They said one specific one I'm going to read from. It says, "I wish my parents would respect my privacy and boundaries, but keep tabs on things that could be dangerous or life-threatening."
Oh.
This is where it becomes a little tricky in today's day and age. Once you reach a certain age, the kids want the phone, the kids want to be connected. And as parents, you're like, do I throw them into the world of, Snapchat, Instagram, WhatsApp, and YouTube, TikTok? Like, where's the boundary with that? I think the boundary lies in setting the groundwork for understanding digital permanence and practicing through understanding and having those conversations that what you say actually could be permanent. Somebody could take a screenshot. Somebody could, pass it along to others, and that's how it gets involved. And then they could edit it. And we've seen it in movies. I've seen it live not every day, but every year throughout the school year. The principal in my school actually says 50% of his time is actually taken because of social media concerns, where, about 5 years ago, it was about 10 to 15% of his problems. So that's where I think parents need to understand the effect of technology. I know there's a great series out there, which our school is showing soon, called Screenagers.
Wow.
And yeah, if you want to write that down, and all parents, I would highly suggest it.
That's an amazing term. Yeah.
Yes, it really is, because
Do you think we're all screenagers?
I think so. And as adults, we just get thrown into kind of figuring out social etiquette, where social media etiquette isn't all that common and isn't natural for kids. Because what's natural for kids is to try to, again, become themselves. And if they're doing that behind social media, there isn't that ability to actually talk out a conflict and then get it done. The conflict becomes permanent, gets twisted out of context. So that's where that needs to be taught. So we're still, believe it or not, fairly in the infancy of really teaching children that. And that needs to be embedded into the curriculum.
Amazing. Okay, how about understanding of emotions and love and the crush that they go through? Is there anything that we can, Yani, on your list about that?
Yeah, so let's see. They talk about in there, so in terms of just emotions, one thing they do say in there, it says, my parents, I wish they knew how stressed out I am with so many demands put upon me in all aspects of my life. So, and the thing is, at this age of adolescence, teens and tweens, there's so many hormonal changes and imbalances that the word crisis seems to be a common everyday occurrence. But for us as parents, here's what I would say to that, is don't get overwhelmed and don't overreact. Stay calm to it. Ask your child to talk it through. And that's one big thing I would say. Like, if a child's not feeling accepted into something, empathize with them. That's really the best way. Any way you can connect with them through a story of something that happened to you, remaining in a calm voice and a loving voice and a non-judgmental voice, letting them talk it through. Because the one big thing I heard from the students I researched with is they really said that they're afraid that they're going to get mom or dad upset, because we know what they approve of, what they don't approve of, and things they don't approve of. I don't want to tell them because they're going to yell, scream, or I'm going to get grounded and punished. So for parents to understand that that those are some of the fears that kids are have, and it's legitimate fears. And by the way, research shows too, in regards to punishment, that children don't strive to avoid something. Children strive to attain something. They want rewards. They want positive reinforcement. They want praise. And that's something, I know as a teacher, there's a fine line, and research kind of goes back and forth. Like, how much praise do you give a child? You say, good job, good job, good job every time, and then they get numb to it. So no, what I suggest is make the praise specific. And don't just say like, good job. You could say, I'm really proud that you did your chores or took out the trash or made the bed when you were supposed to. That really was a great contribution to the family, and I really appreciate that. So thank you. And then that makes them feel empowered. That reinforces that behavior to happen again. And you're actually, what you're doing is you're praising the effort of the child. You're not praising the outcome. So, I mean, that's a whole other issue. As a teacher, I see kids come up to me, I got a 95 on the test. And I said, okay, did you study for it? How did you get that? They said, no, I didn't study at all. Are you proud of me? And I said, well, if you actually put in more effort, you would have even done better. And they look at me like, what? And then another child says, I got, an 80 on the test, and but I improved 15 or 20 points. Are you proud of me? I said, wow, so it sounds like you're improving very well. What do you think caused that? And they said, well, I actually studied. I used flashcards. I studied for an hour with my parents. I practiced in the mirror. I said, that is fantastic. I am so proud of you. Imagine if you just continue to put in that effort, how you'll continue to improve. And they're like, so it empowers the child. And that deals back to emotions too.
Great. I'm curious to know when you mentioned the word fears, what are the top fears for teens?
Oh boy. Yeah. Fear of rejection is really at the top. Fear of not being accepted, fear of humiliation, fear of embarrassment. And, this is a very interesting point because not all children can be lumped into one group as just say, oh, they're kids.
Mm,
There's so many variations on personalities. There's extroverted ones that are just normally outgoing. There's introverted ones, and there's ones who are walking the line, really don't know. They're back and forth and here and there. And overnight, an introvert can become an extrovert. An extrovert can become an introvert, like I said, on the roller coaster of emotion. So
yeah.
those are really the big fears of children. There is fear of loss. I hear kids say to me, my dad's having surgery on this date, on this time. And they tell me because there's a fear of loss with that. So they love their mother, they love their father. That's another one. I don't see so much in America like a fear of poverty. In other cultures and other communities, I'm sure there is because they live it each day. But really the big ones, I think universally are what goes back to love, heard and understood, accepted and respected is really fear of rejection, fear of humiliation, fear of embarrassment. Yeah.
At your school, do you have like diverse cultures or just one main?
Yes, we have diverse cultures in our school, and we have a variety. And actually, in our school, they come from really all over. You'll see them come over from countries from the Middle East, from Africa, from the Asian community. You'll see them come over from actually a lot of students we have too recently coming from Central America, from the Caribbean. So we get a wide variety of students, which is great. It's a suburban community I teach in, but we also have a project choice community where we get urban students come in. So it's a variety of color, ethnicity, which is absolutely fantastic because they really learn. Now, I will say this, I've seen over the years from me growing up to now, a lot more inclusive acceptance of that diverse background, a lot more celebration than it used to be tolerance.
Yeah. So what is one common thing that you can see across different diversities in the teen years?
Yeah, it goes back to universal truths again. It really does. They want to see that you care. And the great motto I always said, they want to know that you care other than caring that you know something. So they won't actually care about you knowing anything until they know that you care. And that's been my motto. And that's actually been something that I've rooted myself in for the last 20, almost 25 years, quarter of a century now working with kids. And that's where I make the connection. So getting to know them at the individual level of who they are and what their interests are, what their fears are, and really listening to them and helping them in any way possible, unconditionally and non-judgmentally. That's really the basis of what all children long for.
So I'll just have a personal question, if you may allow me, to yourself.
Absolutely.
What is one thing that you wanted your parents to know when you were a teenager?
Wow. Okay. One thing that I want my parents to know when I was a teenager, probably it was even a little bit before I was a teenager, is that how to handle bullying and end it quickly. I think having the skills to really handle it quickly. I think it's really tough out there. Unless you're really in the trenches experiencing it, I think it's hard for parents because, you can go to some default tactics of saying, tell a teacher, tell a trusting adult. But in reality, the bullying doesn't happen in the classroom most of the time. Sometimes it does, but if a good teacher can pick up on it and end it. But it happens in areas where teachers aren't around. Right? It could happen in the neighborhood, which it did for me. It could happen in a locker room, which I experienced as well. So being able to actually have those comeback lines and being able to really stand up to the bully and end it in the moment. That's probably what I would wish for the best, but it's easy in hindsight to say that. My parents did the best job possible that they did in the situation and probably weren't aware of the real magnitude of what one kid could actually do. But I will say the happy ending is that eventually the bully got what he deserved on his end for mine, and they all knew it too. Yeah.
Great ending.
Yes.
I'm so happy that we're like the time is about to end, and I'm so excited to
Oh,
learn more about you and about the teens work that you have done. It seems very great, and I wanted to listen more about the connection thing that you mentioned. So
oh,
can you tell
yes.
me just a little bit more about it before we end?
Oh, sure. Yes. So I have a couple audio programs, and the first one that I can offer, and I'm going to offer them at a 50% discount. And it deals with raising a 6S child. So,
Mhm.
and it goes through in depth over all the successes we talked about of self-confidence, self-discipline, self-motivated, self-regulated, self-reliant, and smart. There's a quick tip PDF program that PDF that I offer in the program. And then also there's a program, 30 Days to Finding You, which
Mm.
is a 10 track. And this will help any parent out there. And I would suggest that if you have any unresolved issues in your life that you feel deep down like need healing, this program will do it for you. And it'll help clear away any blind spots in your parenting, which is really key to making that connection with your child. So that's all 50% off. For US dollars, it's around $49 only. So you'll pick up a workbook in the other program as well.
Great, thanks for the amazing offer, actually, Douglas. And so, how can we find that, and how can we register? Can you send
Yeah,
me the
sure.
link so I can just upload it on the chat or?
I certainly will. Yeah, it's on my website, douglashaddad.com. And as soon as you go there, you can just drop down under courses and you'll see all the courses. And you can also find my books there. But I am doing a giveaway as well. So if you actually sign up on my email list, I have a free, and I'm really proud of this, 25-page whole lot of living guide, which helps families go through all the different, what I call ways to become super healthy. So there's a section, how to eat well, how to exercise well, how to think well, how to sleep well. And it breaks it down, and it's all free.
Wow, amazing, amazing. So Douglas, the website is douglashaddad.com or
Yes.
yes. Great. Do we have like something that they would say as a remark that they listen to you here on compassionate parenting, or how does it go?
So no, they just go right on there and they'll just sign up. They'll click on it. It'll pop up as a pop-up on the main page. And then they just put in their email and then they just hit download and then they get it for free.
Okay, and about the 50% discount, how do
Oh,
they get it?
so when
Yeah.
they go there, they'll actually drop down. They'll see under courses, they'll have those two choices. They can get either or both. And then for the discount code, they're going to put in parenthood. So in all capitals,
Wow.
PARENTHOOD, parenthood. And they'll get 50% off. And that'll be good for today and up until actually we'll go until midnight, if that sounds good.
Okay, you mentioned before like you're celebrating Thanksgiving, and it's coming so very next Thursday, I guess.
Yes, we'll have some Black Friday deals coming up too as well. So to tune in. Yep. And I'll have that on Instagram. So if you're watching right now, my Instagram is at DOUGMJH. So I do a lot there and on Facebook. So you
Yeah,
can follow me there.
interesting. Thank you
Yep.
so much, Douglas. It's been my pleasure to host you and to listen more about your enthusiasm about how to help us understand teens. So thank you so much.
Oh, Hannah, thank you for all the work you're doing and bringing us back together. This is how we're revolutionizing the world. One
Yes,
child, one parent at a time. All
yes.
right. Yay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.